We are so close to the fantasy football playoffs, which means in Dynasty, you need to be making moves to make sure that you are ready to win that title. In this video, I have 4 players that you can acquire for at most a late first, and your first is going to be late because you are going to go and win that championship if you buy them. Let's get into it. It has been an absolutely fantastic season for Baker Mayfield, both in fantasy but also in the actual NFL. For a long stretch of the season, he was the quarterback 2, which really surprised everyone, but that Liam Cohen offense absolutely exploded. The quick passing game, the working through his progressions, being able to hit Chris Godwin in stride, working out of the slot. Obviously, he has struggled in the last few weeks with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both hurt, and Godwin is missing the rest of the season. But when you have a look through, he's only finished outside the top 10 quarterbacks 3 times. Now, 2 of them have been 2 of the last 3 weeks before the bye when he was missing Evans and Godwin. Was also playing KC and San Francisco, and that Chiefs defense is a very difficult one to go up against. Now we have Mike Evans back and healthy. Things are looking a lot better. He finished as the quarterback 9 last week in week 12 against the New York Giants. The biggest thing for Baker Mayfield is that he's still available relatively cheap. Now, we are in the point of the season where we've entered a redraft mentality, so he's probably more expensive than he was in the off-season. But the best thing for Baker Mayfield is that playoff schedule. The teams that he's playing against for the next 5 weeks to close off the season: the Panthers, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Cowboys, and then the Panthers again in championship week. Probably only the Chargers are a difficult defense there, and the other 4 are all consensus bottom 5 defenses in the league. There is every chance that Baker Mayfield and the Bucs offense as a whole, I found it quite hard to choose which Buck I wanted to go with here. There's every chance Baker Mayfield is about to be a league winner, and he's not that expensive in Dynasty. If you've watched any of my Dynasty trade videos before, you know that I'll always offer 4 trades for the players that I suggest: a straight up option, a pivot up, a pivot down, and an option for a pick. In terms of the straight up option, I would be willing to send Brock Purdy straight up for Baker Mayfield. We are not confident in Brock Purdy's health and how that's going to look the rest of the season, but I think he's probably in Dynasty still the better long-term option, so it's worth sending him to go and win a ring this season. In terms of a pivot up option, I've included 2 here actually: JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix. Obviously, all of these trades are going to be team dependent, but if you have McCarthy or Penix just sat on your taxi squad or your IR, and you can send them for Baker Mayfield with maybe an early 2 on top, something like that, or maybe like a young wide receiver like AD Mitchell or Xavier Legette. If a rebuilding team has Baker, they might be willing to get that done for a quarterback who has the potential to be a stud down the line. Then the pivot down option. This one was quite hard because a lot of the quarterbacks over Baker Mayfield, I have him quite high in my Dynasty rankings. A lot of the quarterbacks over the top, you're not really going to be willing to send. I considered CJ Stroud. The most natural one for me is Dak Prescott. Dak obviously missing the rest of the season, but still someone that people are high on in Dynasty. And so something that I consider, maybe if you sent Dak Prescott and got Baker and potentially even Mike Evans, you could potentially do, maybe send in a late 2 on top. But I think you could figure something out for Dak Prescott. Then in terms of picks, I'd be willing to send my first if I am competing, which I am. If I'm going to be going and buying Baker, I'm willing to send my first for him straight up. I think it's going to be worth it to go and win the ring this season. If you're enjoying this video, I would please just like to ask you to like and subscribe. Also, leave a comment below with any questions you have. Dynasty, Redraft, we cover everything on this channel. We've burst through 300 subscribers and we've only just hit 3 months, so there is so much more to come. I would love if you would be a part of that journey with me going forwards, so just click that subscribe button down below. But on to the next trade, which is a wide receiver who has been thriving recently. It has really been the tale of 2 seasons for Calvin Ridley. He's the wide receiver 25, but he started off really disappointing, finishing inside the top 10 wide receivers only once through the first 6 weeks, including multiple finishes actually outside the top 80. He was absolutely unstartable. Since then, he blew up in week 8 for 15 targets, 10 receptions, 143 yards, which was absolutely unbelievable. Since then, he's had at least 6 targets a game, at least 4 receptions. The lowest yardage total is 58. It's really been a fantastic season for him in the second half. Will Levis actually looks to be coming on. I've been quite impressed with Will Levis, and I think he might have earned himself a chance to start in 2025. Not that I'm sure that's the best thing for the Titans, but I think he might have earned it. One of the best things for Calvin Ridley is that DeAndre Hopkins was traded. There's not a huge amount else on the team, so you know he's going to get that target share. Also, their schedule the rest of the season is absolutely fantastic. They play entirely teams that we know struggle through the air. So they play the Commanders, the Jags, the Bengals, the Colts, and then the Jags again in week 17. Those 2 matchups against the Jags are going to be absolutely incredible for Calvin Ridley, and I think there's a chance he could be a wide receiver 1 both of those weeks. Then, in terms of the trades that I would make for Calvin Ridley, you can see that these are all kind of along the same theme. So the idea is that you're looking at the different situations of other rosters around your league and looking to trade a stud rookie wide receiver or a good rookie wide receiver for the aging asset. You can definitely get these ones done. So for the straight up deal, I've gone with Adonai Mitchell, but you can kind of substitute Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette here. You kind of understand the theory. The pivot up is the same thing, but a tier down. So Jalen McMillan, Jalen Coker, Jermaine Burton, lots of those kind of lower tier of asset that you can easily move on from. Add a late third and you can get it done, but you might be able to get this one done straight up. The pivot down I've gone for is a little controversial. I'm not particularly in on Jameson Williams. He is at most the 4th target in this offense behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, and it's a run-first offense as well. So I'd be willing to send him and maybe get Calvin Ridley in a 2, and I feel quite happy about it. Then I don't think I'd quite pay a first for Ridley, but an early second, you could probably get it done for a mid-second and feel pretty happy about running away with that deal and winning your title with the schedule that we've seen from Ridley the rest of the way. One of the surprises of this season has been Jonnu Smith, currently sitting at the tight end 5. Even when the Dolphins' offense has been struggling, he's been able to get it done. He's actually somehow the focal point of this offense, aside from maybe Devon Achane. In the last few weeks since the bye, he's finished inside the top 3 tight ends 3 times. He averages just over 6 targets a game. He is the target leader on the Dolphins offense since the bye, which is absolutely unbelievable. And it's got to the point that we actually need to start to believe it. You potentially picked him up off waivers, or he's been sat on your roster for a while as your tight end 3. And now the production has got to the stage that he is a focal point of this offense. It's really, really working with him. And so it's definitely something that we need to consider going forwards is this someone that we need to be starting? The Dolphins often seem to find themselves in shootouts, and they struggle to score quickly. That's the weird thing about the Dolphins offense this year. It's not explosive. It's very dink and dunk, and Jonnu Smith has been a huge featured part of it. But when you look at their schedule, again, it's quite easy the rest of the way. So the Packers on Thanksgiving, that's a relatively difficult one. But then the Jets, the Texans, the 49ers, and the Browns, that is schedules that you actually can score against. Maybe we didn't think so before the season with 3 of them, with the Jets, the Niners, and the Browns, but actually those defenses are really struggling. Also, with the Dolphins offense not doing amazingly, there's a chance that those games could end up being shootouts if both teams need to score. So Jonnu Smith, I think, is actually a really good target at tight end to close out the rest of the season. As per always, tight end trades are incredibly hard. I've gone with the approach that the person who has Jonnu Smith has a slightly younger roster, or they want to be getting younger. Straight up, I'd look for JT Sanders. In another world, I absolutely adore JT Sanders, but he's probably going to miss some time, and this offense is struggling. Although looking better, well done, Bryce Young. But JT Sanders, you can probably get that done straight up. In terms of then a pivot up, Eric All and maybe a late 3. Eric All is a player who was actually the tight end 1 for the Bengals until he went down, and now Mike Gesicki's taken over. But with T. Higgins potentially leaving in the offseason, or probably leaving in the offseason, they need a number 2 target, and there's a chance that Eric All could be that, but you can probably get it done for a player that's not going to contribute right now because he's on IR. Then the pivot down I found really hard. I looked at Dallas Goedert, Evan Ingram, Mark Andrews as well. I think there's a chance that you can get it done for those players, just because of the reputation that they have. But obviously, if the person that has Jonnu Smith is also contending, they're probably not going to want to do that. Then the other option for picks, I think, is just straight up a mid-second round pick. I think you can probably get that one done, and I wouldn't feel great. I wouldn't feel bad about doing that. You might have just seen Aggie walk across the screen. She loves when I'm recording. She likes to get involved. Apologies if you saw her, but I cannot control the places that she wants to go. Then my final trade target to win your league is David Montgomery. I was actually quite surprised to see that he's only the running back 11 on the season. I thought there was a decent chance that he'd be much higher than this, but we all know the tale of the tape with the Detroit Lions. They love to run first. On the season so far, 632 rushing yards, which is not that many. 26 targets, 24 receptions, 241 yards. But the main thing is the 11 touchdowns. With the way that this offense is functioning, there's a chance that David Montgomery, if he's healthy the rest of the season, obviously he was slightly banged up. If he's healthy, he could hit 20 rushing touchdowns, and that's an upside that you just can't get from many players. Obviously, the big thing with David Montgomery is that he is 27. He is in a timeshare, so there's a world in which other players are willing to move off of him. People generally don't like aging running backs, and if you've been willing to pivot the other way, you're probably winning your season because the aging running backs are the absolute stars in 2024. So the trades that I'm targeting for David Montgomery, for straight up, I've gone with Isaiah Pacheco. I think you might be able to get this done now that he's healthy, and you might even find another contending manager who thinks that Pacheco is a better option rest of season than Montgomery, which I don't think is going to be the case, but you might be able to get this done. He's obviously also a slightly better long-term option just because he's a fair few years younger. Talking of younger, in terms of pivot ups, I'd be willing to send Tyrone Tracy and maybe either a late second or an early third, but you might be able to get this one done straight up. Tyrone Tracy, I absolutely love, and I love the talent coming out. He was someone that I really liked when I scouted. The fumbling issues, like we saw him benched in the second half, and it was all Devin Singletary. We don't know what this offense is going to look like going forwards in terms of who's going to be the quarterback, even potentially who's going to be the head coach. I think they might end up moving on from Brian Daboll, which I think would be stupid, but there's a chance. So just with uncertainty around that offense, people are excited about Tracy, but you might be able to get this one done relatively easily. The pivot down, I think, is going to be controversial, and especially when you see the jerseys that are surrounding me, I would not be surprised if Kyren Williams doesn't have that long-term of a future with the Rams. They have shown a proclivity to move on from running backs. They drafted Blake Corum in the third round. He's a very similar player. Kyren is a good player, but not a great one. He lacks elite athleticism, or he even lacks good athleticism. He's sort of a plodder, unfortunately. And I also think the fumbling is really becoming a problem for him. I think Sean McVay is starting to get frustrated with that, but I think you can still pivot off Kyren Williams and get a 2 and get David Montgomery. He's actually, I'm going to do, when we hit the offseason, some buy sells and players to get out of slightly early before the draft. Kyren Williams, spoiler, is probably going to be on that list, which pains me to say, but I think it's probably the case. And then in terms of picks, I think I had an early second. I don't know if you'd get it done. I think probably 2 seconds to get it done, 2025 and 2026, and I'd feel quite comfortable doing that with Dave Montgomery still certain for a couple more years of fantasy relevancy. So that is going to do it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Drop a comment down below if you have any Dynasty questions, whether it's about these players or other moves that you want to make to win that title. I'm going to be back again on Friday with another video, but these weekly Dynasty videos are every Wednesday, and people have been really enjoying them so far. So I hope that you've been the same. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Thanksgiving for tomorrow if you're US based, and I will see you next time.